Before we begin, I would like to take a moment to introduce the rest of the team that has helped with the whole presentation and report. Oh, sorry.
Hi, I'm Madison.
I'm Camille.
And I'm Peyton.
And then thank you for joining us today. We're looking forward to a great presentation and can't wait to answer any questions that you might have in the end. Before we begin our presentation, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge and thank our partners without whom our work would not be possible. Firstly, we'd like to express our gratitude to Corporal Mike Adney and Kristen Husenga for their unwavering support to our project. They both have been an integral part of our team, and their expertise and resources have helped us achieve our objective. We are also grateful for Travis and Fung for their support, our advisors. They have been crucial to the success for our work, and we're super grateful. Last but not least, I would like to express our appreciation to all of our partners who have supported us along the way. The City of Clinton, the Iowa Initiative for Sustainable Communities, everyone in the School of Planning and Public Affairs, and the Clinton Substance Abuse Council. Your contributions, whether big or small, have made a significant impact on our work, and we are grateful for your continued support. Once again, thank you for our partners, and let us begin.
Yeah, so first we'll start off with some demographics, Caesar.
Yeah, so just a few things. So the city population of Clinton is around 24,469. Clinton's population under the age of 18 is 20.9%, which is important to know because of Project this youth drug prevention. And then the racial makeup of Clinton, Iowa is a majority white, Caucasian, so 89.91%, black 5.1%, and Hispanic or Latino 4.4%.
And those are some important statistics to keep in mind when we're thinking about what our recommendations are going to be, how we can create equitable recommendations. Even if there is only a small proportion of minorities within the community, we still want to make sure that we're creating recommendations that target those groups as well.
Yep.
So our first step in this project was to identify a problem statement for which we could kind of create a project scope and then create recommendations based off of this initial problem statement. And so kind of the first part of the problem statement that we kind of addressed was environmental factors. So we looked at this as maybe one of the causes of higher rates of substance use and risk for substance use among youth within Clinton. And so we identified some unique socioeconomic, environmental, and relational characteristics that put Clinton youth at a higher risk than those within the region and then within the state as a whole. So we'll kind of get into that with our background slide. Also, another thing to kind of look at is that our three substances that we're mainly focusing on are alcohol, e-cigarette use, and marijuana. So going back to the background, these are some economic risks that may cause people to engage in substance use. So about 13.7% of residents live below the poverty line. The unemployment rate in Clinton County is 6.4% compared to the state average. So those are two different socioeconomic factors we identified. And then for some health factors, Clinton County ranks 87 out of 99 counties in health outcomes and 90 out of 99 counties in health factors. So we'll kind of get into what that means. So health factors are things like smoking and drinking that lead to reduced health outcomes. So you can see over here, is Clinton County's percentages compared to Iowa's percentages and then to the United States as a whole. So in a lot of different areas, Clinton is higher than the state averages, especially in smoking and obesity. And you can see excessive drinking, they're actually not higher than the state average, but they are higher than the United States average. And then these are the health outcomes. So poor health factors lead to poor health outcomes. So that's things like premature death, low birth weights, poor mental health days. So these are all factors that are contributing to risks for higher rates of substance abuse or the potential to engage in substance use. So kind of moving on, that was kind of just an introductory environmental factors. Something to understand is how our methodology kind of informed the rest of our research and then our ultimate recommendations in the end. So first we started out with a literature review to kind of inform us. That's how we stumbled upon environmental factors being an important predictor for behaviors within different communities. So we thought it was really important to identify those factors within Clinton. It also informed our project scope and gave us kind of a pathway to understand what the literature is saying about things like parental involvement, city messaging, things that you'll hear about later on in this presentation. And then our next step was to do informational interviews. So we visited Clinton, we talked with practitioners, we talked with people At the DeWitt Coalition, we talked with people in the Clinton community schools, resource officers, superintendents. So we talked with a lot of people. One limitation to that, though, is that we didn't have like a formal interview process where we asked everybody the same set of questions. So we weren't able to analyze those interviews in the way that we would have if we had set up a formal interview process. So it was more just kind of an information gathering session. And then next we looked at case studies, which you'll see further on in the presentation, of different cities and what they're doing to address some of these problems and how we could apply that to Clinton. And finally, we did some program analysis. Specifically, we looked at the different websites, we looked at how the information is being placed out to the public and how accessible it is, and then we kind of identified some ways to make information more readily available and more easily accessible to the community. And then going on to our first project scope. So the first thing we did was we created a GIS map of the density of liquor stores, nicotine outlets, convenience and gas stations, and grocery stores. So the first map has a 1,000-foot buffer around the schools. And a 1,000-foot buffer is about 3 football fields. So any of the stars inside the buffer are within 1,000 feet of public schools within Clinton. And so we can see that there's a couple of convenience and gas stations within that buffer. And our research shows that anywhere between 0.1, 0.25, and 0.5 miles away from a school, a playground, or anywhere where a youth spends time is increased with an excess of heavy drinking for youth. So that's why it's important to see where these liquor stores and convenience stores are located in relativeness to areas where youth are hanging out, because the ability to access these places so easily does have significant impacts on rates of substance use among youth. So our second map here shows a buffer zone of 0.25 miles. So we can see that this school here has a lot of different liquor and vape stores that are either on the cusp of that buffer zone or almost in that buffer zone. And so, of course, if we would have buffered it out even to 0.5 miles, I'm sure we would see many more schools in that area. This is only for 0.25 miles. So one of our recommendations is that any of the liquor or vape stores within these buffer zones should not be able to market outside of the building, as to not attract students to come into these buildings. So they shouldn't be able to market like alcohol, vape products, stuff like that. They can market inside of the buildings, but we do recommend having an ordinance on liquor and vape stores for advertisement within school zones. All right, moving to our next recommendation.
Nice recommendation. So our next one is increasing parental involvement in youth drug prevention. So our findings also show that there is a lack of parental involvement in Clinton, Iowa. So we recommended different things when it comes to this. First, we recommend the update the Clinton Substance Abuse Council meeting training page with up-to-date information. We figured out that it only gets updated yearly, which should be happening at least every month for consistency and letting the community know what's happening throughout like the whole community. We also recommend to offer incentives like food, refreshments, and trainings for parents to come. Offering incentives can be an effective strategy to increase participation to programs, and research also shows that offering incentives such as gift cards or other rewards can motivate people to attend the programs. Another recommendation is to send out invitations for trainings through the community. So this can be churches, youth organizations, or also schools. This will help to get more of the community involved in reaching specific populations. I'd also recommend to personalize invites and thank yous following events and trainings. We do understand that we might be attracting the same crowd, and that's something that we have heard a lot, that the same parents coming back in and out. But it's also important to build trust with those community members that you might always see, and keep chipping away to the people that might not be coming, and just keep inviting them and keep personalizing these invitations. And we definitely have seen, well, research definitely shows that it definitely helps a little bit for sure. Lastly, the last recommendation to increase parent involvement is to incorporate parents or advocates into planning and trainings. Parent and advocates can play a critical role in youth drug prevention efforts. They can provide valuable insights into the needs and experiences of young people, help identify areas of concern, and also provide support and resources to prevent drug use.
All right, so going on to the next one. So after visiting Clinton Public Schools, we saw that the schools have a lot of procedures and policies in place to kind of try to curb e-cigarette use in schools. So I think one of our, upon visiting Clinton, we wanted to make sure that these were the most effective policies being implemented, and we wanted to see how we could make current policies more effective. So one thing that we noticed when looking at the Iowa Youth Survey is that e-cigarette use in the 6th grade is about 1%. In 5th grade, it's about 0%. And then from 6th grade through 11th grade, it skyrockets to almost more than 20% of 11th graders using e-cigarettes. So in the spirit of prevention, we think it would be most efficient to start these BOTFIN life skills training in 5th grade so students have those resiliency skills before they enter 6th grade, when that first kind of like peer pressure, the first temptation to use e-cigarettes is appearing per the data. And then they'll be able to use those skills before they get addicted to substances, maybe in 6th grade, and that carries on as they get older. So we think for prevention, implementing it in 5th grade and at the 5th grade level would be the most effective, because this is where we've identified that this is before they've started using and trying those types of substances. The next thing is that we would recommend replacing suspension with positive behavior intervention and support, or life connection screening. So currently, life connection screening is used to decrease suspension time, but it doesn't replace suspension time. And so upon researching suspension, we've seen that suspension is linked with higher rates of isolation, mental health problems, higher rates of dropping out of high school, and higher rates of substance use. So we think that suspension is actually not what we want to be focusing on when trying to help students who may have a substance problem, especially because we've identified a lot of environmental factors that will make students who do experience suspension more vulnerable to experiencing the negative side effects of suspension that the literature does point out. So we think that having something like a positive behavior intervention and support policy within the school is really good, because PBIS teaches students how to meet behavioral expectations instead of assuming that they already know those expectations and know how to meet them. So in order to implement PBIS, it would require probably a board that gets trained, and then the ability to implement those policies within the school. And students who need a little bit more extra help meeting the expectations would be able to receive that extra help instead of being immediately punished because they're not able to meet those expectations. Or we recommend using life connection screening to completely replace suspension instead of just reduce the amount of time that students receive suspension. And then the next thing is that we noticed that Clinton Public Schools is using vape detectors, electronic hall monitors, and other deterrence tools. And one important thing that we wanted to point out about deterrence tools is that students are able to learn how to move around deterrence tools. So if you see a reduction in vaping, a reduction in the vape detectors going off, it doesn't necessarily mean that there's a reduction of vaping in the school, because you're just teaching students how to get smarter and get around different deterrence mechanisms. So we think it's important to understand that when you're using deterrence mechanisms, to also use behavioral-based interventions, because you want to make sure you're changing their behaviors, not necessarily teaching them how to move around your restrictions, especially when those restrictions are no longer in place when they go home, the moment they leave the school premises. We want to make sure that we're preparing them and giving them the tools to actually change their behavior instead of getting smarter and moving around restrictions.
Yeah, so and then our last recommendation for today is city messaging. So our findings indicate through collaborative conversation that the city of Clinton needs to do a better job of messaging. Messaging like for like different drug events or different events happening that the Clinton Substance Coalition is offering. So we're thinking of media campaigns. So media campaigns that target parents and family members will be very important. When thinking of media campaigns, it is important to think about a few things. So one big thing is understand your target audience. So thinking about the age range. So are you targeting adults, children, etc.? Then after that, develop a clear and compelling messaging. This can be like showing statistics or research or anything that supports the messaging behind that specific message that you have. After that, choosing a media platform. So this can be TV, schools, social media, billboards, or anything like that. Also, I would recommend involve youth into the campaign. Staying current is very important, especially like if you're just using Facebook, it probably is going to hit one specific demographic other than if you're using Instagram or anything like that. And then after that, it's recommended that measure the effectiveness. So this can be done with surveys and can see if the actual messaging is actually hitting the specific population or not. You may be asking to yourself, what does the media look like in Clinton? This could be specific messaging, could be as simple as like there's an event happening hosted by the Clinton Substance Coalition, or the city could be offered printouts or for establishments or public entities to be able to put around their place of work. This will also help raise awareness to different resources that the city offers in regard to youth substance abuse. Next, we have utilizing influential people in the community. This could be exactly what I said. This could be finding influential people around the community, but you might be asking yourself, who are these people in the community? While it's difficult to determine who the influencers, quote unquote, are in the Clinton community, many middle schools and high schools know which specific students might have a little bit more credibility. This could also look like pastors or popular establishment leaders in the community. Asking community leaders and locals who they consider to be influential in the community would also be recommended. These influencers, quote unquote, will also be advertising what is happening in the community with substance or drug prevention and sharing resources that can also benefit the community. We also have partnering with different entities in the community. One particular partnership that requires carefully handling is the involvement of local churches in Clinton. A suggestion would be a council member or a Christian or a member of the coalition or the coalition once a month going to a church and speaking what is happening in the community with substance prevention and resources that would be beneficial. Next, we have the city of Clinton should also start to text their residents more about different available resources. Cities like San Antonio have utilized these specific messaging formats to help them get different things out. While the city of Clinton already has a text messaging alert to notify the public of garbage delays, city hall closures, or any other weather events happening in the city, they can use it to other different things too. It is very simple. Right now, if you see, do another click. If you see right now, it's as simple as that, right? It can look like Clinton, Iowa, join us tomorrow for a family event and resource fair hosted by the Clinton Substance Abuse Council at Eagle Point Park. Then after that, have the little website for more information. And it's very simple, just to subscribe, bam, yeah, and then just text SCAC 23999 to opt in. Very simple, just to get that simple, yeah, right, it's really fancy. Just to have people subscribe and then actually participate and have that resource available for them. The next one is student advocacy. So Clinton, Iowa has a Mayor Youth Commission, which is comprised by 7th grades to first-year college students that discuss issues relating to the youth. Similarly, in Arlington, Washington, a youth council that includes high school students in the grades 8 to 12th grade also discuss kind of youth problems. But this specific youth council also has projects that encourage to do like vaping education and a different drug use kind of thing, and teaching middle schoolers how not to do drugs, etc. And it is recommended that the Clinton Youth Commission do more projects that can do more to do youth drug prevention. Then lastly, update social media and website. The Comanche Coalition and Clinton Substance Abuse Council also must just improve its social media presence and website. This then will help the city of Clinton better navigate messaging, and we recommend a full website update to this.
I was just going to add, we also would recommend hiring like an AmeriCorps person or an intern to kind of take over the website design and updating that, because we know that that might not be a full-time position and not necessarily need to be like a paid position, but it would definitely be good to get in an intern or somebody to take over that role.
Yep. Yeah, and that is pretty much it for our recommendations. I hope you would consider some of our recommendations today, and we hope to answer any questions that you might have.
Is that last picture you guys driving here today?
That was
last Clinton trip. And we were parked. We were parked. We were parked. We were parked. We were parked.
Of course you were.
Yeah.
So you had messaging, city messaging. How does assumed you'd be doing it through like the school districts. Like instead, because it'd be more natural for them than the cities messaging. Can I ask why you chose the city messaging system?
I would say, like, first off, I think the school is like who you would expect to tell your kids maybe don't engage in drugs, right? And so it might not necessarily be as influential to students because you expect your teachers to be telling you, like, don't engage in drugs, don't do this. So I think we're also looking for other avenues in which we can get that message out there, trusted officials, because obviously it's not enough just doing it in schools. I think there already is a lot of messaging and a lot of correspondence to parents, but we're just still not seeing the number of parents participating at events. We're still seeing high rates of substance use, so I think we have to explore those other avenues as well.
On that topic, I don't know, the city, as soon as you said it, I never miss my garbage because I get that text every twice a week. It's both days if it's the recycle. But I think it would be good if the city would allow us to do that, because you don't know who we're going to reach. We're going to reach a lot of people that we're not reaching through the, grandparents, other people that are maybe don't have kids in the house. So I think that's a great idea to try to utilize that, because again, my garbage is out every week, and and maybe different people would show up. So at some of these events, if they had that, because they don't know about it.
For sure. I know for me, when I thought about this idea, so I'm subscribed to my hometown one in Illinois for some reason still. I don't know how to opt out, but
don't opt out.
Yeah, right. But it's fun just to like see, look, there's an event happening in Aurora, Illinois, and like I'm not going to it, but it's just I know that's happening. Or like it was very useful when my parents were trying to find vaccines or anything like that. And like, hey, we have a vaccine thing happening in Jewel Osco today, and like it's it was very convenient for me to let me.
Yeah, I think what Jim brought up is good with the schools. Obviously, we want to do that, but how many people are dealing with their kids or grandkids that aren't getting the school messages, that are outside that box of just parents within the schools?
Yeah.
So I think it'd be great. That's a great idea.
Jocelyn.
This is probably a super hard data point to find, but did you hear from any of your interviews how kids are commonly getting these substances? Because you can't walk in and buy them underage, right?
Maybe.
Well, I mean, when we came here, we heard a lot of people saying even just like sometimes they just get the vapes, and it's just like it's like they're not getting carded, or they just find specific areas that they know that are kind of.
If everybody just takes a moment to think, if you ever drank when you were underage or used a substance when you were underage, where'd you get it from? Like the kids are getting them from their parents in their homes,
older siblings,
other towns, in this town. Like it's prolific, and there's probably like 10 different ways that students could probably be getting them. Yeah.
Kids are getting smarter.
There's no way to know.
Exactly.
Just curious if you did.
So I've done a lot of substance use screenings in school districts when I work for Life Connections, and I always ask that question, and I can approach them with confidentiality because I'm not going to tell on them. But I'm always curious. How did you get this? How did you get this? And the majority of them get them from somebody in their family, and the ones that don't get them from someone in their family are getting them from an older kid, an 18-year-old kid who that's their hustle, is to sell vapes to other little kids. So it's not a pretty picture, and that includes marijuana, alcohol, not just vapes.
For sure.
It's everything. That if their culture is this is how they've been raised and this is what they've been exposed to all their life, then they see it as an acceptable thing, instead of changing the culture of the parents and the relationship between drugs and alcohol at a personal level,
I think one of the ways that we hoped to combat like building trust with these communities that we're not partnering with is through like family events in addition to resource fairs. So like say you're going to have a resource fair, but you partner with a company that happens to have a bouncy house, because that like they're not going to come to a government sponsored event if you're partaking in these illegal activities. So being able to partner and begin to build those relationships, personalize that contact, and build that trust is one of the ways that we can start to make those connections.
At the beginning, you talked about community stores location, and then 100 or 1,000.
1,000 feet was the first buffer.
Where did you pick those numbers from? The 1,000 feet?
Yeah, so that's the literature says 1,000 feet is what the recommended buffer is around schools for liquor stores, but the effects carry over up to half of a mile away.
We were also looking at policies within like other states and other communities, and 1,000 feet was a very common number.
Did you, Stuart, you asked something, Chris? Did you ask, city ordinances and things like that to limit the ability to advertise? Did you find any other cities in your research that did have that in place and said, hey, in these school zones, in this area, because it's a tough topic for businesses, and how many cities will say, hey, we're not gonna allow you to do that. It's gonna be, you're not gonna have a business there. I just wonder if there's anybody you found that actually has that in place.
Oh yeah, yes. The 1,000 feet thing, it was a very common policy.
It was the advertising.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
You found other city ordinances that said that did not allow businesses?
I don't remember the cities off the top of my head, but I do recall seeing that. But I mean, I stole the idea from another community.
That's information.
And it's not necessarily like liquor stores, but I know in Iowa City we have like rules where you can't have payday loan stores within 1,000 feet of each other, ordinance zones for that, to just kind of try to limit the density of those. So we also have like those, you could definitely implement ideas like that as well, just to kind of limit the density, especially surrounding those schools.
So please make sure we include an example of cities in your report.
Okay.
Thanks.
That'd be great, because if we go to our council and say, hey, other cities are doing it, how do we implement something like that if we can't give them something that says, hey, there's 10 other cities in Iowa that are doing this and it's helping, and we want, if you have something like that, that'd be awesome.
I'm just curious about what BOTBED is. Is that like a just educational?
Yeah, so it's a evidence-based life skills training program. So it's basically meant to teach students resilience lessons so that they can kind of learn to cope with stress and different things that might come up in their life so that they aren't turning to substance use. And then I actually did a little bit more research on kind of the efficacy of BOTBED, and it's pretty like proven to decrease like rates of like tobacco use, alcohol use by almost like 87% for tobacco, I think was one of the statistics from like the Denver, from College of Boulder. So yeah, it's pretty proven to decrease those compared to students who aren't utilizing BOTBED.
And it is the gold standard. Like it's the highest rated that it can be for, in Clinton Middle School in Clinton, if you don't know, does it at 6th, 7th, and 8th grade now. Okay. They're getting at the middle school, so the recommendation to back up, I'm assuming, was to...
Just a little nudge.
Hey.
In your research, did you ever come across any type of mentorship programs for kids that do get in trouble with substances in school?
I don't think we focus necessarily on mentorship programs. I definitely think there probably is like a usefulness. I think a lot of what we've learned is that like familial connections, like parental connections, are risk factors for use of substance abuse. So if the family member in the home is using substances and they don't have that role model in the home, we definitely need to be looking towards other role models in the community and in schools that can kind of take that place to kind of guide students in the right direction.
And I know some of the literature also shows like after school like activities or after school clubs. Definitely it's very helpful, and I know it's not mentorship, but it's some sort of like thing that students can look forward to or look towards to other than doing specific drugs.
A lot of the recommendations that I had for parental, increasing parental involvement, one was actually taken from a study that was done at 16 boys and girls clubs. So I think that parental partnership partnered with the adult mentorship is very relevant.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of the children that are using substances early and that are in danger of developing a disorder. It's a generational disease. And without that connection to somebody who's maybe gone through that themselves, and to have a positive male role model or a female role model, and I mean, I believe that's super important to develop.
Yeah, and I definitely think too, like if we can get more families to these events and then get mentors in these areas, I think it's a lot about just getting people to attend things. So hopefully that they can be connected with the right resources and mentors at events like these.
Any other questions?
And are either of these, are they going to be sent out to the people that attend?
Yeah.
Or to the city?
It'll be sent, I think they're going to send it out to us, and also you're going to put it online. It'll be online. We'll get a copy of it.
Okay.
I'll make sure you. And if you don't, obviously Jim Irwin's with our county board of supervisors. But
Awesome.
But he'll make sure everybody else in the county gets it too. If we're aware of it. So.
Yeah.
Great presentation. There's no other questions. I appreciate. It's exciting for. I hope you. I mean, this is your last presentation. You're all graduating from the University of Iowa, right?
He's got one
And,
tomorrow.
this is the master's program, right? This is awesome. We're very excited and awesome that you put on this presentation. We're excited for the University of Iowa and Professor allow us to continue to use the students to help our community.
It was great. Yeah, it was really fun.
We learned a lot, and hopefully you learned a lot going through this.
Absolutely.
As you become leaders in each of your towns, that you'll be able to take that with you too. So we appreciate the work, and we look forward to having a copy of it. But thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we're done.
Look at all these smiles. They're like, I got to turn that camera off.
Yeah.
Appetizers.